Good afternoon everyone, welcome to our small footprint. Today's video is a bit late. Normally I would have done all this in the morning, but we have had so much rain. We're now up to like 170 mils this month so far, and there was only 40 mils in all of October last year. So the ground is not happy. We managed to bog the car when we went and got a big hay bale to bed down the chickens and stuff, and managed to bog the ute trying to get it closer to the poultry pen. Had some lovely neighbours who came and helped us pull that free. Thank you very much, Angie. So I've been a bit tied up this morning getting things done with the rain and everything else, so getting this out late. I also just recorded the voiceover a bit late, like now, which is unusual for me, and the kids are loud. There's music going somewhere in the background which I don't know if you could hear, and there was a big frog who just had to have something to say. I'll quickly show him to you because he was right here while I was trying to record things. There's two of them actually. Let me turn you around. This is our overflow tank that sits beside our garden water tank, and these two have decided to make a bit of a home here, and they were not happy with me chatting so close to them. He was definitely having a bit to say about that. Of course I won't do it now while I've got the camera on him. So I had to stop and start a bit, and the frogs were going off and the kids, and I don't know how well that voiceover is going to go, but we will see. So today's video is we did sourdough pizza for dinner, and we did homemade sausage rolls for lunch, and I have sort of given a bit of an updated review on the Bakerstone Pizza Oven that I got from Bunnings. My last video on it was not overly favourable. It was a little hard to use. It didn't seem to work anywhere near as well as I had hoped, but we have used it a lot since then, and I am far happier with it now. So I would actually recommend it. You just have to do things a certain way to get it to work. Things like closing the hood on the barbecue to get the heat up higher and things like that. So I've gone into that about the Bakerstone while I've cooked the pizza as well, and shown that as a bit of an updated review. And yeah, and we made sausage rolls. So hope you enjoy watching. Sorry for it's a bit of a mishmash all over the place video, but I thought I'd get it up anyway because I put it together for you. So there we go, and I will see you again next time. Thanks guys. So I started off with the pizza dough. So my pizza dough, I make sourdough and I do it the night before, and I let the dough proof overnight, and then the next morning I will shape it into 8 pizza bases. So my dough is of a quantity that it will make 8 bases that are about 240 grams each, which is about the size that I make them. And I do have the recipe in the show notes of another video, but I'll try and remember to put it here as well. I use semolina in the tray that I put the dough balls in, because the dough balls are going to be shaped and put on the tray and then put in the fridge to stay in the fridge until about half an hour before I'm ready to use them in the afternoon. So semolina works really well because it doesn't get absorbed by the dough. If you use flour and things like that, it will just get absorbed by the dough, and it won't ease the stickiness, and if you've got too much flour when you put it in the pizza oven, then the flour will burn as well. So semolina is a really good one to use, so that's what I use, just a nice fine semolina. So I divide it into 240 gram lots, and I turn it into rounds, and then I put those rounds into baking trays is what I use. You could use anything you wanted, and then they go into the fridge for the day until I'm ready to use them, and I pull them out about half an hour before I'm ready. So I did that first thing in the morning for dinner tonight. After that I sorted out lunch. So when I got the food hamper, I got a roll of beef sausage mince. It had a mix of ingredients. It was mince as well as some like corn flours and some fillers and some herbs and things like that. It's not something that I generally buy, but it is something that I was pretty used to seeing from when I was a kid. My grandmother used to buy it a fair bit, and what she used to do with it is turn it into sausage rolls. So that's what I did with this. So in my Thermomix I put the sausage meat from the hamper, I put onions and carrots, any other vegetables that I could find. You do have to be careful when you're putting vegetables in sausage rolls because they release water. The water can make your pastry soggy. So if you're using anything that's too wet, then you need to put something to suck it up, whether it's some breadcrumbs or some stale bread or something like that into the mince, to make sure that the sausage rolls don't end up overly wet, because otherwise your pastry will end up quite soggy. So I added the vegetables, and I didn't end up adding any breadcrumbs or anything of this because I didn't have any zucchini or anything, so it didn't have anything that was overly wet. I did add some bacon to it though, because bacon's always nice in sausage rolls. It adds a bit of fat to the meat and some moisture to the sausage rolls, and added a bit of garlic and things like that. I blended it together, as I said, with the Thermomix, so I ground up the vegetables first and then I added in the mince. With the Thermomix, you can use the spatula that comes with it. It has a collar on it that means that when you put it in the lid of the jug, it won't go far enough that it can hit the blades, which means that if something's having a little bit of trouble blending, you can use that the spatula to move it around the Thermomix so that the blades pick it up a little bit better. It's a handy little thing to do, and it works really well in this particular case. So I blended that all together, ready to go. Once I had that, I had pulled some puff pastry out of the freezer. This is just store-bought. I believe it's vegan because it's dairy-free. Borg's, I think, is the brand. Puff pastry. I don't generally make puff pastry because I don't think it's worth my time. I tend to buy the sheets, but you could make your own if you wanted to. When I do sausage rolls, I tend to do 2 rows per square, so I cut the square into 2 rectangles, and that's what I use for each roll. And I just, by eye, I put meat down the middle. So the first one that you roll, you'll realise sort of what quantity of meat you need down it, because it'll either not be enough or it'll stop you from rolling it. So I have made a lot of sausage rolls in my time, so I sort of just knew what I was doing here for quantity wise, but I suppose it needs to be a little under 1/3 wide, because you want the pastry to roll over, to wrap over it, but also to overlap slightly. Once you've got the meat in the pastry, you just roll the pastry to meet itself and overlap slightly so that it sticks together, and put the overlapping side down so that that's got pressure on it for when it's cooking and doesn't pop open. And you can cut them to whatever you want. Sometimes I cook them in the full rows, and then once they're cooked, then I slice them afterwards. I was a bit late getting lunch started, and I wanted these cooked fairly quickly, so I cut them up before I put them on the tray so that they would cook a little bit faster than if I left them in the full lengths. Personal preference as to how big you want to make them, party sausage roll size or full size sausage rolls, whatever works for you. I put an egg wash on the top of the pastry. This just makes it brown up nicely. It just looks nice. You don't have to do it. Kavik wanted to help, so I just put an egg and a tablespoon of water into a bowl and whisked it up, and then gave him a pastry brush and let him brush it over the top of the sausage rolls. And then we sprinkled sesame seeds on top. You could sprinkle anything you want, or you sprinkle nothing at all, entirely up to you. I really like sesame seeds and things like this. Darryl's not a fan of sesame seeds, so I don't always use them, but I did this time. But I could have used my everything bagel seasoning, or you could use poppy seeds, or just a bit of flaked salt, or again, just leave them bare. Personal preference there. We served these with the apple butter barbecue sauce, and they were great. The biggest issue I have with them is that this entire batch was just one meal. So it's not overly time intensive, but it's not exactly quick meal to prep either, and then it all gets eaten in one sitting. Sometimes it's a little bit frustrating, but everyone enjoyed them, so that's the main thing. So that was lunch, and then for dinner we did the pizza. So when I pulled the pizza dough out of the fridge, I put the Bakerstone pizza oven from Bunnings that I've reviewed previously. So this is a little bit of an updated review as well. So I stuck it on the barbecue at the same time that I pulled the dough out, so it'd have sort of a half-hour preheat. So I took the little guards off the flame as well, so that there was no guards, and I now close the lid on the barbecue. So if I close the hood on the barbecue, have the guards off, and have the pizza cooker, the oven, whatever you want to call it, on the barbecue, then it gets up really hot. It gets up past its red line sort of thing. So once the dough had warmed up a little bit, and once the pizza oven was nice and hot, I started on the pizzas. So I use a wooden chopping board as a pizza peel. It fits inside the pizza oven, which is the main thing. You want to be able to launch the pizza inside the pizza oven, and it works well for me. I might get a peel at some point to use, but for the moment this works perfectly fine. So I use a bit of semolina on the board as well, and then I put the pizza dough on it. So you want to try and stretch your pizza dough without doing too much to it. So I always try and sort of leave a crust that isn't stretched out. So I go around first and I pull the edges out and leave a little bit of a bubble at the crust, and then I just move the pizza dough around and around while stretching it with my hands. I don't want to be too rough with it. I don't want it to lose all its air. Some people choose to dock their pizza dough so it doesn't bubble up anywhere, but I like it to be a bit chewy. I like it to have those air pockets, so I don't dock mine at all. So once I get the pizza dough to around about the shape and size that I want, I put toppings on it. Now, because we're cooking it in these pizza ovens, you don't want too much topping because it doesn't cook for very long. So everything that goes on it has to be cooked or nearly cooked, and you just don't want to overload it or the dough will be raw in the middle. So I use home canned pizza sauce that I get off the shelf. I quite often put zucchini butter mixed in with the pizza sauce, but I had forgotten to get any out of the freezer. But it's really nice to use zucchini butter with the pizza sauce. It gives a really fresh flavour and it's more veggies. We tend to use home canned pineapple for the kids. I don't like pineapple on my pizza, but they really do. So this is pineapple that I've canned and put on the shelf, and we use a jar for pizza night every time. And then whatever meat that we have that's leftovers, whether it's marinated chicken or it's pork mince or it's pork roast, anything that we happen to have that we've used, it works. We do have some bags of these sorts of things in the freezer as well, pre-cooked meat, vacuum sealed up, that I can pull out to use as pizza toppings if I want to. So we use some sort of meat on there as well, normally a bit of bacon on the top too. We really like corn on pizza, so we use a tin of corn that we spread the corn on the pizza, but you could use anything to your taste, obviously. So in regards to the Bakerstone oven, we want to preheat it with the lid down. I think that's one of the big things that I needed to do differently. So we're going to launch the pizza into the pizza oven as well, and then we put the lid down while it's cooking. So it only takes around about 5 minutes to cook, with a sort of a rotate about every minute as you're cooking it, and with the lid down most of the time. At times it does get too hot and I have to leave the lid open for a little bit because it's just cooking off a little bit too fast, but that's just because there's enough topping on it that it needs to cook a little bit slower, I suppose. If there was less topping on it, it probably wouldn't be an issue. So it's around about every 60 seconds that you rotate it, and it takes like sort of 4 turns and is ready in about 5 minutes. Closing the lid was a big thing for me. It just didn't get hot enough without that extra closure on it. Now on the barbecue it's fine to close that lid because there's great big air vents in the back of the barbecue, so you're not actually closing it in there. Like, you're maintaining the heat better, but you're not keeping it closed, because one of the things on it is, not to use it in an enclosed spaces and things like that. But because of the way the barbecue is made, there's great big air vents in the back, so it's not really an issue. So this was my cheese one before it went in, and then when it comes out. So 5 minutes was what it took to cook, and then it came out perfect. Now I'm the only one who has cheese, so mine gets cooked last. Everyone else's doesn't have cheese, and we make duck egg mayo, sometimes pesto flavored, sometimes with a bit of cowboy candy, anything like that, and we drizzle that over our pizzas as well, especially for those who are not having cheese. So I didn't get a great video of the pizza, so I took a photo too of these big bubbles in the crust, and this is what we are hoping to see. You want them to hit the pizza oven hot enough that it does these great big bubbles in the crust. For us, that's a perfect sourdough pizza to me. It has those big bubbles and chewy crusts, and that's what I'm after, and it has worked really well. So after a few tries, I'm really happy with the pizza oven, and in fact, if my barbecue was large enough, I probably would have bought a second one so that I could cook 2 pizzas at a time, but my barbecue is not wide enough. Maybe when I eventually get a 6 burner, then that might be the way to go, but I have definitely, after some work, found that this pizza oven is well worth the $80, which is all that I paid for it. So I hope you enjoyed watching, and I will see you again next time.